Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into the engine that drives literally every great business idea, capital. Whether you're dreaming up a massive online store, the next big software company, or a heavy-duty manufacturing biz, having a killer concept is really only half the battle. Today, we're unpacking exactly how businesses actually secure the cash they need to turn those big dreams into reality.
Imagine this. Your brilliant idea is mapped out. It's ready to go. You've got the passion, you've got the plan, but boom, you quickly hit the ultimate roadblock. You have to spend money to actually make any money. It's kind of the oldest paradox in the business world, right? So, where exactly does that money come from?
Well, let's clearly define what we're talking about here. Business financing is simply obtaining the necessary cash to start, operate, or grow a business. The ultimate goal is super straightforward, but man, it's challenging. You need to get enough money to bring your vision to life, all while keeping your financial risk firmly under control.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The cost of starting up. 2. Bootstrapping and personal networks. 3. Borrowing, or the debt path. 4. Selling slices through equity financing. 5. The power of crowdfunding. And 6. Choosing your funding path.
All right, Section 1, the cost of starting up and why you absolutely need external cash.
Here's the core issue we all face right out of the gate. Every single business has massive upfront expenses. We're talking equipment, inventory, employee salaries, big marketing campaigns, and of course, office or warehouse rent. And let's be real, if your early profits can't cover all that, and honestly they rarely do, external cash becomes your only lifeline just to get this thing off the ground.
Moving into Section 2, bootstrapping and personal networks. Let's look at early-stage funding.
So bootstrapping is often the very first step for most founders. This is where you're self-funding your business entirely with your own money. You are the sole source of financing for the new venture. And, it's worth noting that a lot of incredibly successful companies started exactly this way, just building from the ground up using personal savings.
But this path creates an immediate, pretty tense trade-off. On the plus side, you get to keep full ownership of your company. Zero debt and no investor bosses breathing down your neck telling you what to do. But the disadvantages are real. Your capital is strictly limited by whatever you actually have in your bank account, and you carry a much, much higher personal financial risk if things go south.
Now, if you don't have those savings, you might turn to your personal network instead. The people who already trust you. Getting the money might actually be easier. And the repayment terms? Usually incredibly flexible. But there is a massive catch. If the business struggles, awkward Thanksgiving dinners are going to be the least of your worries. You risk damaging vital, lifelong relationships. Expectations aren't always clear, which is exactly why you absolutely must put these agreements in writing. Yes, even with your closest friends.
That brings us to Section 3, borrowing, the debt path where we enter the traditional financial system.
Welcome to the realm of debt financing. This simply means borrowing money from an institution like a bank that you have to repay with interest. The crucial thing to remember here is that banks are looking for two very specific things before they hand over a dime: your clear ability to actually repay the loan and the assets or collateral you can put on the line to secure it.
And there is a real double-edged sword to this debt path. The huge advantage is that you keep your entire company. You don't give up a single drop of ownership, and your repayment structure is super predictable. However, you are now firmly anchored to monthly repayment obligations and interest costs. Plus, because banks really prefer proven track records, securing these loans is notoriously difficult for brand new businesses.
So this brings us to a major fork in the road of your startup journey. If you don't want the heavy burden of a bank loan, or maybe you just can't get approved for one, what's the alternative? How do you get that vital capital without taking on a mountain of debt?
Let's explore that in Section 4, selling slices or equity financing. We're talking about trading ownership for capital.
With equity financing, you aren't borrowing money at all. Instead, you are literally selling a slice of the pie. You're bringing in external investors who hand over capital, and in exchange, you give them actual ownership shares in your company.
And here's the massive trade-off with equity. On one hand, you completely escape the pressure of those monthly loan repayments. Plus, you often gain access to incredibly valuable industry expertise, rich business connections, and potentially way larger funding amounts. But you sacrifice a chunk of your ownership. And crucially, you surrender a degree of control over your own business decisions. Basically, you're trading away a portion of your future profits for the funding you desperately need today.
A major player in this equity space is venture capital. VC firms specifically target startups with massive, explosive growth potential. They provide huge investments and strategic guidance for highly scalable businesses. Think tech startups. But remember, they aren't handing out this cash just to be nice. They expect incredibly rapid growth and significant, outsized returns on their investment.
Okay, Section 5. The power of crowdfunding. Pitching to the public.
Honestly, think of this like a massive online pre-order campaign. Crowdfunding uses popular platforms to let you collect small amounts of cash from a whole bunch of different people. It is a brilliant way to validate your market demand early on and build a loyal customer base, all while reducing your reliance on traditional lenders. However, it requires a phenomenal marketing effort and a really slick product presentation to actually work, and success absolutely never guaranteed.
Finally, Section 6. Choosing your funding path, matching your business stage to your strategy.
The reality is your best financing option almost always depends on your specific stage of growth. In the startup stage, it totally makes sense to rely on personal savings, friends, family, or crowdfunding. But as you level up into the growth stage, you really start looking at bank loans or private investors. Then finally, when you hit rapid expansion, the scale shifts again, and venture capital or massive investment rounds become the logical source to fuel that fire.
Looking across all these options, it really just boils down to one fundamental tension. There is no perfect funding source. Every single option is a compromise. Do you want to take on debt, retaining full control but carrying the absolute burden of a rigid repayment schedule? Or do you choose equity, surrendering a literal piece of your dream to avoid that intense financial pressure?
The smartest entrepreneurs out there, they don't just blindly chase money. They don't just ask, hey, how can I get cash? Instead, they leave themselves asking this vital question. What is the most strategic way to finance my growth? Because balancing those growth opportunities with your financial risk and picking the absolute right way to fund your business, well, that can be just as important to your ultimate success as the business idea itself. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those tough questions, and I'll see you in the next one.